welcome back. This is Joel, and we'll continue with our Firepower series. In this particular video, we'll be talking about NAT, right? Network Address Translation. I'm not gonna get into the theory part of it because I think most of you, or at least people who have been dabbling with networks, would probably would have already come across NAT. Right? You have different types of NAT. You have static NAT, dynamic NAT. Static NAT is kind of like a bidirectional NAT, right? Because you just have like one-to-one mapping. As a result, anyone from the internet can also connect back right to you. Whereas dynamic NAT, is probably not bidirectional as such. Then there is PAT as well, right? Port address translation, which again can be both static and dynamic, right? Our FTD being a firewall, you can configure NAT pretty simple, in a very simple fashion, and achieve the translation which is needed, right? So in this video, we'll be doing a series of use cases using the policies, right? Using NAT policies, and we'll see how we can configure and achieve some of our use cases. Sweet. All right. So what we do is, let's go back. So this is a topology. I think for people who are coming down here for the first time, you've got like two FTDs. At least till the previous video, they were in HA, right? In this video, I've kind of broken them, so which means they are no longer in HA. They are individually working. They are not in failover, or they are not in high availability mode right now. And I've turned off the branch FTD for now because we won't be using it. We'll be mainly playing around with the campus FTD, right? This is the jump host, or kind of like a PC with which we'll do some of our testing, right? This is like the inside interface of the firewall. You've got some servers here, you've got some DMZ, and this is the outside interface which connects up to a router, which is like the ISP router which connects to the internet. Sweet. Awesome. So let's do this. So we'll start with how do we configure the policies. Jump onto our FMC, right? This is our FMC. You can see two bright green devices here. Everything looks good between the devices. So let's go and configure. So we'll click on NAT over here, right? And here you have two options. Either you can go for a Firepower NAT or Threat Defense NAT. I've already told you Firepower is for like the older classic devices. So we will go with the Threat Defense, right? We'll give a name for the policy. We'll call this as FTD NAT, right? And we'll select the HA1, right? We'll be doing this testing with HA1. Cool. Let's save that. Now the policy gets created, but this is of no use just having policy. You need to have some rules inside it, right? Now here you can see a bunch of things. You might be confused as to what this is. So in Firepower, you can create two different types of NAT rules. One is called Auto-NAT, and the other one is the manual NAT, right? So irrespective of whatever you create, you still have to go to the right and top corner and click on Add Rule, and there you have to select if it is Auto-NAT or manual NAT, right? Now the main difference is that with the manual NAT, right, which is kind of like the rules which you create with manual NAT, you can either put it before the Auto-NAT, or you can put it after. Whatever you create inside Auto-NAT, right, the rules which you create with Auto-NAT, they are kind of arranged or ordered by your FTD itself, right? So it is going to order it. It has some criteria, and based on that, it is going to order it based on the IP subnets and all of that. Based on the network objects which you are using in those rules, it is going to order it itself. But if you want more flexibility, if you want to kind of control, right, if you want a more granular control, then you can go for manual NAT, and that is and there you have the control on arranging it, ordering it, right, and stuff. One simple example would be, I don't know, maybe if I can explain here in a better way. One simple example would be, say you have a bunch of servers in your inside network, right, and you have created an Auto-NAT rule, right? You have created an Auto-NAT rule for the whole of your subnet, say 192.168.133.0, right? For the whole of the subnet, you have created an Auto-NAT rule saying that when the traffic from this subnet goes out to the internet, please do something like dynamic PAT, right? Translate it to the interface over here, right? Translate it to this particular IP, right? You would have put that rule as Auto-NAT, but then you want to create one specific exception for this rule, right? So how would you do that? In that case, that exception part of it, right? Maybe there is one single host, like in this case, for 192.168.111.5, you want a slightly different rule to be applied, right? So in that case, you can create a manual rule for this one, right? Whereas the Auto-NAT rule will get exercised for the rest of the subnet, right? So that's one use case, and we'll look into how we can configure all of that. That being said, let's go ahead. So let's create a rule. So let's create the first rule. First, we'll dabble with our Auto-NAT. So let me go and select here. So this is what I was telling, right? You have two types of NAT rules. So we'll create Auto-NAT first. Again, you have options of static and dynamic, right? Just like your static pat, dynamic pat. Similarly, you can have, you know, static and dynamic. We'll start with dynamic, right? We'll create something very simple, which is a dynamic NAT rule. Here, what we'll do is we'll select probably the general network, right? This is because we want to now translate all the traffic. So first use case is we want to translate all the inside network or the general network, right? When I say general, it is the inside network, this one. We want to translate anything coming from there, right? To what? To the destination's interface IP, right? Destination's interface IP is basically this one, Ethernet, which is that, sorry, the gigabit 0/0, right? Gigabit 0/0 of the firewall, which is nothing but 192.0.2.1, right? This one, right? So we want to translate everything to the basically it's the outside interface of the firewall. So we want to translate everything to that. So that's why you select here, right? If you had multiple interfaces, right, multiple outside interfaces, then in that case your firewall might use different interface different times, right? So dynamically it will be using different IPs for translation. In our case, we just have one outside interface, so it will use always that 2.1 which I showed. Cool. So that is there. Did I select? Okay, I did not select the interface objects. My bad. So in interface objects, you have to select where is the traffic going from. So it's going from inside, so that's going to be a source, and it's going to outside, so that's going to be a destination, right? So interface objects is selected, translation is selected, right? And I think we are good, so we can click on OK here. So there you go. Let's save that guy, and let's deploy this one. As usual, right? We'll have to deploy this. So let's go. Let's click on that one, deploy and deploy. Right? So let's wait for a minute for that to finish. All right. So that's deployed, which means we can first check if we have internet access. Let's just ping cisco.com. Yeah. So you see the ping to cisco.com is working. So first, let's also probably one way to check if what we have done is right is probably to SSH to our ISP router, right? So we can do SSH Cisco and what is that? I forgot my IP. I think it is. Let's see what's the IP. It's 192.0.2.2. Okay, so let's do that. 192. My bad. Give me a second. Yeah, so it's 192.0. Okay. Yeah. .0.2.2. I'm typing it on my wrong monitor again. My bad. All right. So there you go. So it's gonna ask me for a password, and let's say who over here, right? So it should give me, or probably let's do show users. I think that's better. Or yeah, you can see here the let's do show users. Probably that also should give stuff. Yeah, but anyway, so you can see the request is actually coming in from the 192.0.2.1, right? And that's basically the translated IP, right? We can also check, maybe we can log into a particular, let's probably, I don't know, maybe go to, let's go to the Debian website, right? And let's look at the translations over here, right? Now this is a problem with the, I've not been able to figure out how to get the SSH working for this FTD, at least on Eve. So we have to be content with this view. It probably might not show everything, but yeah, let's see. If we do show Nat Detail, I guess, NAT Detail. Yeah, so it's going to show you the you can see the last entry over here. This is the one which we configured just now. You can see the translated hits, and you can see the source, right? 192.168.133, that's a general network, and you can see the translated IP is 192.0.2.1. Sweet. So that's how simple it is to configure it, right? So let's move on. So what we'll do next is let's go back here, close this one. Yeah, so the second NAT policy we will configure is we did dynamic NAT just now. Let's do static NAT this time, right? So with static NAT, what I want to do is say I have two DMZ hosts here, right? So what I want to do is probably to one of this host, which is here the DMZ host 2, right? Let's check out its IP. I've forgotten the IP of DMZ host 2, which is 192.168.10.99, right? We wanna connect from our inside network to this guy, right? At the same time, we wanna have static NAT, which means I don't wanna connect to 192.168.10.99. Rather, I wanna connect to a different a static IP. Technically, generally in an actual network, generally you would want to do this when you want to access this DMZ somewhere from outside, right? If you want to access this DMZ host somewhere from the internet, then you would give it a public IP and then you would do it. In our use case, because we don't have an internet here, let's try to do static NAT, but from our inside network to the DMZ, right? So yeah, you'll get to know as we configure this. So it's fun, right? So let's go click on the pencil mark here. So let's add one more rule, right? So we'll add one more rule, and this rule also is going to be Auto-NAT. We'll do manual, not NAT later. So it's going to be static, and let's see the interface objects, right? So here what we'll do is the traffic is going from DMZ, right, and to the inside, right? Operation cannot replace selected. Okay, did I do something? Okay, sorry, here. Yeah, so DMZ to inside, right? Be careful. I mean, it can also be inside to DMZ, but then the next section would vary accordingly, right? So just make sure, imagine it, while you're configuring this, so that it's easier. So imagine now packet going from DMZ to inside. So in that case, what would be the source address of the packet? It will be, the source address will be this one, right? Whatever is this 192.168.10.99. That's the host. So right now I don't have an object here, so let's go and create this object. Do I have one? I don't know. Let's check. I don't remember creating. Yeah, so I don't have it. So let's go and create. Not an issue. So it is going to be DMZs. I'm going to say 2, right? That's my second host. So I'm going to say DMZ2 or let's say DMZH2, right? It makes sense. And it's an host, so it's going to be 192.168.10.99. That's the IP. Sweet. Okay, so we're going to save that. And let's select that guy here. Right, so that's the IP, and it gets translated to what, right? It gets translated to a new IP which we want to create, right? And that IP could be anything. Like we will give a name for that first. It's going to be DMZ-H2, but this time it is the NAT IP, the NATed IP. We can give anything. Let's give 10.10.10.99, right? So what's the use of static NAT? Now you understand. I don't have to connect to 192.168. Rather, I can connect to this particular IP from my inside network, and our firewall will translate it, right? Because of this one-to-one mapping which we have. So okay, so that goes, and let's go and select here again DMZ, the NAT one, right? So that's it. As simple as that. We are basically telling this particular host gets translated to this one, right? You can also translate ports and all, but in this case, let's keep it as is, right? So I guess this is, I've selected this thing. Yeah, that's good. So let's say okay. Let's save this guy. Let's deploy this one, right? And observe here the two arrow marks, right? The two arrow marks you get basically when that particular rule has bidirectional NAT possible, right? And I told you this earlier. Only with static NAT you can do bidirectional NAT. With dynamic NAT you can't really do it, right? So let's wait for a minute. All right. So let's quickly check this one out. Looks like it's completed, hasn't it? Yeah, it's completed. So to verify this, what we can do is let's so this is what I was telling, right? So we can do SSH with the user Cisco. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically doing SSH from the jump host to the DMZ host 2, but not to its actual IP, rather to the translated IP, because that's the whole idea about using static NAT, right? So it's 10.10. Remember, we use this IP .99, I believe. Right, there you go. So it's giving me the password, and awesome. So I can do show users probably, right? So it should give me here, it should give me the IP of my this particular PC, right? The jump host, which is .30, I believe. Yeah, there you go, right? So it basically, this whatever I've connected is basically this is basically my jump host, right, which is in the inside network, and you can see the firewall has successfully translated this IP, right, into 192.168.10.99, right? So, and we can also probably see over here, if you do show NAT detail, right, there you go. So you can see here the third rule, DMC to inside, that is the one, right? And you can see untranslate hits is 2, right? It's untranslating because you're doing it in the reverse direction, right? We are what are we translating here? We had actually defined the Nat rule to translate the IP address of the DMZ host, but then I'm SSHing it from the inside to the DMZ, right? Cool. So that being said, so we have tested two things, and both of them were, what were those? These were your Auto-NAT policies, right? We checked dynamic NAT, we checked static NATs, right? Next, what do we do next? So we'll try a little bit of manual NAT. All right, so for manual NAT, let's go back here. Let's go back to this one, and okay, let's go to NAT again. So manual NAT, right? Again, it's traditional NAT itself, right? Just like your Auto-NAT, it's just that it'll give you more flexibility, and the rules will appear above your Auto-NAT, right? So that's the, or above or below, right? You have two provisions, so you can order them wherever you want, right? And the arrow marks which I was talking earlier was this one. You see the first one, you don't have double-sided arrow because it is dynamic NAT. For second one, you do have, because of this arrow mark, now you can let the firewall translate it either ways, right? Traffic going from DMZ to inside or inside to DMZ, right? Awesome, cool. Let's continue. So let's do manual NAT. Let's add a rule. Let's select manual NAT. Now here I can select, once I select manual NAT, I can either put it before or after, right? That is, over top or bottom, right? So I'm gonna keep it before for now. And here again, I have option for dynamic and static. Let's go with dynamic, right? So what are we going to do in this one? Let's see. So we want to connect from our inside network, right? From our inside to, again, the DMZ host. Let's do this. Let's do it one step at a time, right? So we want to connect from inside to our DMZ host. So because we want to connect from inside, let's select inside over here and the DMZ over here, right? Cool. So till here we are set. Okay. Let's go to the next one, which is translation. See here, the view kind of slightly changes, right? When compared to your Auto-NAT, you have more options here when compared to your Auto-NAT, right? All right. So here, what do we do? So here first is what will be the source? Because we are going from inside to DMZ, what will be our source? Our source will be general, right? Because that's the subnet which we are in. Cool. And once that is selected, where are we intending to go? So the original destination, right? So I don't think there is already a host for that. So let's add DMZ H1, right? The host 1. And I think that is 192.168.10. I think 90, if I'm not wrong. Let's just double check that. It should be somewhere here, right? So this is my, yeah, it's .90. So that looks good, right? So yeah, that's DMZ H1. This is good. So let's save that. So here, let's go and select DMZ H1, right? The host 1. Yeah, so we are good on the original packet side, right? This is the original packet which will originate from the inside of the network with this source, this destination. And what do we want the translation to happen? So we want source translation in this case, right? Plus the second thing which I also want you to concentrate here is you also get an option to translate the destination also, right? We won't be doing it in this example, but you have the flexibility. You did not have that in your Auto-NAT, right? But here you see you have the option to translate your destination as well. Anyway, so coming back here, so what are we doing here? We want to translate the source, right? So we want a new address for the source. So what we'll do is let's go and click on this add button, right? So we will say maybe something like general, right? General to what is this, host 1, right? And let's say NAT, right? General to host 1 NAT. And what will be the IP address? We could go with something like 192.168.10. I could go with like 12, right? So what will this do is, it's really fun. Let's see, let me just save this once. Let me select it here and then again explain to you. Yeah. So what it is going to do now is, when the packet is going from inside to DMZ, right, with its actual source IP, it is going to, the firewall will translate that to this one, right? So you get the gist of it, right? So here we are doing what we call as a source translation, right? When the packet is going from inside to the DMZ, again, probably you might not do it this way in your network. You probably wouldn't do it between inside and DMZ. Generally, you would do this, from your network to the outside internet. But since, we are just, doing it here since we really don't have an actual internet out here, right? So anyway, so back here, what we will actually end up seeing is when we try to, do SSH or something from the inside network to the DMZ host 1, we will see the source which is connected, right? It won't show its actual IP, it will show the translated IP, and I'll show you that in the demo, right? So once we are done with this, let's save this one. Let's say OK here, right? Let's add one more because this saving and deploying takes a lot of time. So let's add one more manual NAT rule, and we'll do slightly different here, right? So it's going to be still probably dynamic itself, right? Let's go with dynamic itself. But what we'll do here is let's select again general, because we just have only, it's going to be general network obviously, because we just have only one inside section where I have one jump host setting. I don't have many hosts to test on. So the source will still be general network, but the destination, this time let's use the host 2 which we have, right? And let's also do something fun here. What we'll do is, let's do probably something like, instead of using the port 22, right, let's also do port translation, right? What I mean by that is, let's go and create a new port here. So let's say SSH, but this is going to be port, let's use the 222 over here, right? So TCP, that is good. I think that should be fine. Wait, here I should give the port number as well, right? All of this makes very much sense when I actually show you the demo. Configuration might get you a bit confused, but not to worry, I'll be showing you stuff. So here, let's go and select the new port which I just now created, right? What I basically want to do is, for this second host, right, which is DMZ host 2, I want to connect to it from my inside network, but at the same time, I want to connect to it using not port 22, right, but rather a different port, and I want my firewall to translate it. Getting the point, right? So here the translated, I want obviously it to be SSH, which is port 22, right? So I want my firewall to do the translation from triple or this 4 twos to this, right? And what else? So here also, and I want obviously the source IP also to get translated just like we did before. So let's go and create one more of those. So just like we did before, general to host 2 this time, and let's say NAT, right? And what will we go with? We can go something like 192.168.10.15. Okay, should be fine. Save. Okay, let's select that guy to host to 2 NAT, right? So everything looks good. I think it does, right? Let's go and save that. Okay, so you can see here we did not select the the zones here. Let's or interface objects mainly. So let's do that. It's basically inside going towards DMZ, right? So let's save that. Okay, sweet, right? So just to recap, what we did was we did manual NAT here, and you see the manual NAT basically appeared before the Auto-NAT rules, right? And if you see, the first one is just going from inside to DMZ, right? But DMZ, it's mainly going to host 1 per se, right? So it's going to host 1, and what we want is we want to just translate this general network to this whatever the translated IP I've given here. For the second one, it is doing the same as first one. In addition to that, it is also translating the destination port, which is 4 twos, right? And it is translating from here to the normal port 22 of the SSH, right? So let's save that and deploy as well. Right, so save, deploy, select, yeah, deploy. All right, let's wait for a couple of minutes for that to finish. All right, looks like it is completed. So time to go and quickly first check if stuff has come here. Let's do show NAT detail. Right, you can see the NAT Auto-NAT policies here, but I think your manual NAT policies are probably above, right? The section 2, I really can't see the section 1 here. Can you see if there is some show command to see the manual NAT? Probably not. Sorry about this. I mean, I've not been able to figure out the SSH, so we'll have to just rely on our demo here. So what we'll do is let's go back here, right? So we want to test this, right? But technically, yeah, that is the show command which you use, show NAT detail. And if you have a SSH session, this should actually show nicely, right? It should actually basically show you over here. So maybe let's see if show xlate works. Xlate. Okay, maybe this might show us some stuff. So let's see that. Meanwhile, first what we'll do is let's get back to my this thing and let's try this. So what we did was let's try the first one. We'll do SSH -L Cisco, and what do we want to connect to? Host 1. Host 1 is 192.168.10.90, right? So we want to connect it to this particular host, and let's observe. So ideally, as per our policy, let's go back to our policy. I forgot our policy. It's somewhere here, right? So let's check out our NAT policies. Ideally, when you connect to host 1, I'm expecting only the source IP address to translate. All right, the firewall should translate the source IP address, right? That's what we have configured. So let's just double check that. Yeah, there you go, right? So we want the source IP address to get translated. So let's try that. Let's use this. Yeah, there you go. Let's use Cisco and show users. See, I'm already inside host 1. Let's see what is the IP address. It shouldn't be 1.133, right? It shouldn't be in that subnet. It shouldn't have this subnet, right? Because this would have gotten translated to something else. That 133 would have gotten, yeah, there you go, right? You can see it has gotten translated to 10.12. This is what we used in our policy, right? Now exit out. Let's try the second one. But the second one, this is the host 2. And remember, I also want my SSH port also to get translated. So I'm going to use the 4 twos. Remember, that's what we have configured. So let's try this. There you go. The firewall picked on it and it translated it for me. And if I do show users, it should again do something like this, right? It should have translated the source IP also to something in this range. Right, there you go, right? Works properly like we expected. Awesome. So that's mainly about the 4 things. Those are 4 use cases which we tried. Let's do one more before we wind this video, which is going to be identity NAT, right? Let's do identity NAT. So we have done static NAT, dynamic NAT, we have done Auto-NAT, we have done, manual NAT. Let's do one more, which is Identity NAT. And Identity NAT is really funny. I mean, the use case is really funny. So let's try that. So let's go, and it's going to be a manual NAT, obviously, right? Let's keep it static here, right? All of this, let's keep it as is. Let's select inside here, right? So we are basically translating traffic going from inside to anywhere, right? Let's keep it any, that's fine. Let's go to the translation, and in the translation, what I want to do is, I don't know if I already have a object for, let's check that. Give me a second, probably let me close this. I want to check if I already have a object for my jump host, right? If there is, so this is the way how you can check. You just go to the object browser or object manager, and if it is listing it over here, that means it is there, then I don't have to create a new object, right? So there you go. So we've got, do we have jump host anywhere? HIJ, no, I don't see, or maybe let's go to the next page. Yeah, okay, there you go, right? So we've got jump host. This is what we want, right? Jump host. We want to use that guy, which is 192.168.133.30. Correct. Cool. So we'll have to use that. Awesome. So let's create once again manual. Everything is fine. This one, let's just use inside. In the translation, what I'm going to say is, say jump host here, right? Hope I use the right one. Yeah. So jump host, and let's say traffic heading towards our ISP router, right? ISP router. Let's select ISP router here. So traffic going from jump host to the ISP router, and maybe the port is SSH. Cool. Now what we want to do is, in Identity NAT is actually no NAT. It's basically when you really don't want translation to happen, right? So that is when you do Identity NAT. So it's like, think of it this way: putting an explicit rule like this in your NAT policy makes sure that your firewall doesn't translate it, right? So if you don't do this, what would your firewall do is, it might translate this IP address as well. In this case, jump host, it might translate the jump host as well as part of, I don't know, maybe some NAT rule, or maybe some other, manual NAT rule, right? Auto-NAT or manual NAT rule. So Identity NAT is literally no NAT, right? As simple as that. So you see here, I'll not be putting anything on the translated section because I really don't want the translation to happen, right? I want my jump host to use its own IP address when it talks to the ISP router, right? Or when it goes anywhere, when it is talking to the ISP router, right? So that's the key part here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say okay. Hope I've put everything needed. So that is good. Jump host is here. This is good. Original IP, jump host, this one, original SSH. Yes, looks good. So let's go and save this one. I promise this is the last one, right? So let's save that guy, and let's deploy, right? So give it a second. All right, deploy and deploy. Cool. Let's wait for a minute. All right, so looks like that has gone in, which means we should now be able to go to our jump host. Where is our jump host? This is our jump host actually, right? And just do a SSH. Let's clear this a bit, right? And do just an SSH to whom? SSH -l Cisco, and it's 192.0.2.2, right? And I expect when I do show users, right, I expect it to show the IP address of my jump host as is without any translation, right? Because of the Identity NAT. So let's check that, right? So I'll do show users. Give it a second. Yeah, there you go, right? 192.168.133.30. That is nothing but my IP. I can quickly show it to you as well. If I do ifconfig, this is literally my IP which is on my Ethernet as well, right? So there you go, right? So that basically covers everything which I wanted to share in this video. Right, what we did was pretty cool. We kind of ended up configuring 4 interesting NAT. We ended up talking about NAT policies, and in that we went deeper and we configured static NAT, dynamic NAT, we configured Auto-NAT and manual NAT and identity NAT as well, right? So that's all we did. So this is all we did, right? Feel free to check this out and create your own rules and do much more fun stuff with this. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Have a good one.